Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about oil spills. It's one thing as an oil company we try to avoid at all costs. One, it's an environmental mess. Two, it is very, very expensive to clean up. A small 1 or 2 barrel oil spill that gets on a pond can cost $30,000 to $50,000 to clean up. If it gets in a creek or a river, then it's going to go a long distance. You've got to be able to find where it starts, get out to the end of it and contain it, stop it from going any farther. All that takes manpower and a lot of money, because if it's contained, if it's in a firewall at your tank battery, that's one thing. The state doesn't worry too much about that. They'll just tell you to clean it up. If it gets in a body of water or a stream or a ditch and starts to migrate away from the point of the spill, then the state and the EPA gets involved with every step of it. And they make you clean it up until they're satisfied that it's cleaned up. We're going back almost, over 10 years now, but the Macondo spill in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, the BP Oil Company, the big spill that everybody remembers. There were almost 5 million barrels of oil spilled from that wellbore. And if you remember the news from that time, everybody was predicting that it was going to be an environmental catastrophe that we're going to see for the next 30 years. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. It was a tremendous tragedy, a disaster, but the oil companies, they know how to find and produce oil. They also know how to clean it up. So there are 3 things you have to do if you have an oil spill. The first thing is you have to contain it. Got to keep it from spreading. That's what these are for. These are booms that will float on the water. You can link them together. You can, link them across a creek or a river. You can put them on a pond and keep the oil in one half of the pond or whatever. Let the wind blow it into it and contain it. If you can, you have to disperse it. I'll show you an example of how oil can be dispersed. And that's what, in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Macondo spill, that's how they handled a lot of it. They use dispersants that the oil's floating on the water. The dispersants, they dropped them from an airplane. The dispersants land on the oil. With the wave action and the energy, it works its way down into the oil to the surface area where the oil and water contacts, and it breaks that oil up into smaller particles, and then it disperses. It goes down, and as it disperses and the wave energy breaks it up, there are naturally occurring microbes in the water, in the ocean. If it's on the land, there are microbes in the earth, in the dirt, that eat the oil. A big part of that oil was they contained it with booms, then they hit it with dispersants. It breaks it up so that naturally occurring microbes can eat the oil. There are naturally occurring oil seeps in the oceans all over the world. That's how they discovered oil offshore California, because the oil seeps were washing oil up onto the beach. So it's a natural thing, and nature has a way of taking care of that, so we don't have oil slicks all over the oceans, all over the world from natural oil seeps. So you have to contain it, try and disperse it, and then recover as much as you can. These things, down in Louisiana, when they would get the oil contained, these things, they would run them through these huge, like the old wringer washers, run them through these huge wringers and squeeze the oil out of them. Then they can be put back out and used again. Probably 60% of that oil that was spilled was recovered. That's why it wasn't a 30-year catastrophe. In Illinois, we may get oil into a ditch or a creek, so we'll take And you guys will see this Wednesday when you go on the tour. We have a trailer set up for emergencies like that. And we have all this type of equipment that we need, and our guys are trained to handle an oil spill. We'll set these, say it gets in a creek, we'll set these booms out downstream from where the oil is, so it will, the current will wash it down, and it will contain it with these booms. What's inside these is basically this stuff just ground up. It's an absorbent material. I really can't tell you exactly what it's made of. I'm not sure, but it's basically the same thing that are in these that this is. So we'll let the oil get contained behind the booms, and then we'll take a vacuum truck and suck up, recover as much of it as we can. As it goes down the creek, there's vegetation and so forth on the sides or around the pond. So some of that oil is going to get on the vegetation. So these, in slang terms, we call these diapers. You take the vegetation and you literally wipe the oil off of it. When this gets saturated, you have to put it in a bag and it goes to a hazardous waste dump. You can with a truck, you can wash as much oil off of the vegetation back into the creek where it can be contained and picked up. But what you can't wash off, you have to wipe off with these to get it as much off as you can. So that's how we handle a spill that gets on the water. Like I said, a big part of it, the majority of it, if you get it contained, can be recovered. If you have a land spill, like around a wellhead, or if you have a flow line leak, you're going to see where that oil's coming out of the ground. The first thing we do, the pumper is a person that checks the wells every day. And one of their jobs is to look for leaks. So, and one of the ways they know they might have a leak somewhere is if their production is off. If they don't have the usual amount of oil being put in the tank that day, they know they've got a leak somewhere. So they go look for it. So the first thing you have to do is dig it out. If it's a flow line leak, you dig it up and you turn the production off so there's no more fluid going through the line. You dig it up and you repair that line so that the oil is, the leak is stopped. And then you recover, with a vacuum truck as much oil as you can. And then we have this absorbent material. It's called Biosorb. And it is a natural material. It's like cellulose. It feels like wood pulp. It is a plant-based product, but it's also infused with microbes. So you can spread this out over the oil spill, and it will absorb it, and then the microbes that are in this product will eat the oil. So this particular product, the Biosorb, does not even have to be picked up. It can be left on the ground, and it just, the microbes and stuff, it eats the oil, and this just goes into the soil. It can be tilled in or whatever. You do not have to pick this up when you put it on an oil spill. I've got one other type of material here. This is more of a cellulose type from cardboard or whatever. This works good on water. If you can throw it on the water and it will absorb the oil. It has to be recovered and it has to be disposed of. You can't leave this out. It won't biodegrade. So we have to dispose of that. So I'll show you how a dispersant works. I've got some crude oil here. This is crude oil. This is pretty dark brown or black. It can be as green as that plant there behind you. It can be almost clear. It can be brown. It can be black. It depends on what formation it comes out of. It can be a different color. It's not all black like you think. This comes, you'll see the well that this oil came out of up at Salem. It's Devonian aged oil. Comes from a well that's about 3,250 feet deep there at Salem. So I'll take some here and just put a couple of drops on the water, and you can see that it floats and it spreads out. So that's what happens when it gets on the water. So if you take it, this is Dawn dish soap. This is the most used product to clean up oil spills, especially on animals, on birds and animals. They use Dawn dish soap almost exclusively because it is the best product for cutting the grease and cutting the oil off the animals. It cuts the grease off your dishes. It doesn't harm your skin. The part of it that cuts the grease is actually a hydrocarbon product. So that's why it works so good. So anyway, you can see that the oil has dispersed or spread out on the water, and you can see what a dispersant does when it hits the oil. Of course, it's confined in this glass, so it just goes to the edge, but it disperses the oil, and you can see it breaks it into little particles, so then the microbes can eat it. This stuff works very well if you have a small contained spill on a confined water area. This pretty much disperses it to where the microbes will take care of it. Like I said, Wednesday, if you come up to Salem on your first stop, I'll be there. I'll show you the oil field and a little history of that. You'll see the well that this oil comes from. We'll show you our emergency trailer and all the equipment that we have to handle an oil spill if one does occur. And just give you a little history of the field there at Salem. And there's some interesting history to that field, so you'll get to learn about that too. So that's about it, I think, if you don't have any questions.